नमस्कार दोस्तों 24 दिसंबर 2024 we are going to discuss editorials from The Hindu. First article here, it discusses about governance, what were traditional concepts, what are all the modern concepts, what we need to learn from modern values of governance. We'll discuss this article in detail. United States President elected Donald Trump, he had made a decision to create a new department called Government of Efficiency. Basically, shooting down CEO of premier healthcare company, it are related to basically many incidents. Basically, it's possible to discern a common message in Trump's creation of new department and the kind of gruesome incident happened in healthcare department. There is a growing realization for need to better and more people-oriented governance. As we are beginning to celebrate birth centenary of the India's most popular Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he was known for his emphasis on good governance. It is very important to revisit the concept in the context of changing world order. India's experiment and experiences, these things could enrich global endeavor also. There are at least three reasons why revisiting good governance is very critical today. First thing, in face of growing disenchantment with democracy in several parts of the world, the unified theory, basically it was taught by Harvard academic Pippa Nuris. This merits a serious consideration. Basically, this unified theory, this central thesis is that the institutions of both liberal democracy and state capacity, they need to be strengthened parallelly for most effective progress. One can reasonably argue outcome of the United States election, they gives light on the liberal democracy's deficits, even underlines need for efficient statecraft. Second thing, given inevitable role of human element in good governance, this practice would require changing people mindset to be more effective. Conversations in the past 10 years in the country, they offer significant clues. Thirdly, we should explore how Indic concept of Raj Dharma, this can resonate with modern idea of good governance. So, as well known, origin of the concept, this can date back to 1992. World Bank report of that year, Governance and Development, they gave first attempt to defining what is the concept called governance. In 1992, World Bank, its report called Governance and Development. Later, there were 8 parameters that were listed in the governance practices. Basically, participatory, consensus-oriented, accountability, transparency, responsiveness, effectiveness, efficient, equitable and inclusive, and rule of law. They all are defining attributes of good governance. While World Bank definition in corporate aspect of the process of delivery, there is no mention where good governance actually begins. Basically, it is related to implementation. Any definition of good governance, this must underline the importance of flawless, result-oriented implications. Since implementations cannot be ensured without commitment and passion by those charged at the grassroots level, attention must be diverted to grassroots mindsets. Therein, this lies important concept called P2G2. This was a term called by present Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, when he was Chief Minister at Gujarat. What is P2G2? Pro people, good governance. It is like Gangotri sensitivity, commitment, sense of responsibility. Without all this, good governance is merely basically a theoretical. You defined good governance in 1992. You brought some 8 theoretical values. If you can't follow that, then it cannot become good governance. It is against this background, India originated concepts like democratization of technology, lifestyle for environment, women-led development, Sabka Prayas, for participative and develop-oriented governance. These merit consideration for inclusion in the list of characteristics of good governance. There is evidence to suggest India's success in the promotion of digital transaction. This led to democratization of technology. Life, what is life? Lifestyle for environment, this is a proposition that nobody can oppose, especially in the face of climate change challenges. Women led development, this compels men to shed chauvinism, even accept women's intrinsic ability to lead also. It is very crucial to step to ensuring gender justice, sabka prayas, everyone making effort. This is making nip in the bud in any inclination to outsource development to government. In his blog written by basically Kanyakumari in last year, Prime Minister Modi highlighted the importance of Indic concept called Antyodaya, thereby role of India also. Prime Minister Modi, he told, our efforts from empowering the poor to last mile delivery, these things have inspired the world by prioritizing individuals standing at the last rung of the society. Our ancient scriptures, history, as well as culture also, they are important inspirations to make good governance more meaningful. They make concept more purposeful, even result oriented also. If you see Bhagavad Gita, it highlights adhishtanam. This is important element in the foundation of everything, including governance. Prime Minister Modi's Karma Yogi project, this build capacity for government in which is governed by same impulses. The importance of Raj Dharma, this is reiterated by Kautilya. This provides framework for leadership for modern democratic governance. Kautilya concept, in fact, elaboration of essential Indic concept called Antyodaya. Arthashastra even reiterated the king should shoulder the responsibility of children, old, childless women, diseased person, and above. So all infirm who did not have natural guardian to protect them. Arthashastra even also describes king as a servant of the state. In similar vein, while describing Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj approach towards kingship, many have used the term Upabhogya Sneha Swami. Basically, it is complete worship of subjects sans any personal aggrandizement. So, during this concept, India must share responsibility of shaping global discourse. It must draw the treasure of its own civilization worldview. The idea of South-South cooperation, this would get new importance and new push if traditional societies take lead in reforming apparatus of democratic governance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he has already contributed through many distinct ideas. This is article about good governance. See, basically India has many such concepts we can teach to world. Basically, this is what happening in present era. Governance also improved a lot. Let's hope it goes further. Next article is about India's growth in the green cover, India's environment policies. We will discuss this article in detail. There was 18th biennial state of forest report. Basically, Forest Survey of India, once in 2 years it releases the report. They found that there is marginal gain of 156 square kilometer forest cover and sizable increase in 1289 square kilometer in tree cover since 2021. For the first time, India's green cover, this exceeded 25% threshold. Basically, 8,27,325 square kilometer, 25.17% of the country under forest cover. Basically, 21.76 under forest and 3.41 under tree cover. But this is not a good news actually. So basically, if you can see, 25.17% is under forest cover. If you see trees and forest, tree patches, basically they are smaller than 1 hectare. They do not count as forest. And they do not have measured separately by Forest Survey of India as tree cover since 2001. This latest biennial cycle, this registered sharpest growth in tree cover, basically 0.5% jump in 2 years. Previously, tree cover had been fallen from 3.04% in 2003 to 2.76% in 2011, and it almost rose back again 2.91% in 2021. In comparison, India's forest cover has increased by only 0.05 percentage point since 2021. This is consistent with trend of diminishing growth because India's forest cover crossed 20% threshold at the time of millennium. Between 2003 and 2013, forest cover increased by 0.61 percentage points to 21.232 from 20.62%. In the next 10 years, it grew only just 0.3%, that is just 21.76%. So India's total forest and tree cover is 25.17, but it is not good news actually. So it should have grown very good manner decade. So irrespective of land use of ownership, tree patches of 1 hectare or larger with minimum canopy of over 10%, they are counted as forest in India. Areas with canopy density of almost 40% or more, they are considered as dense forest. And those with canopy density 10 to 40% are open forest. Since 2003, areas with at least 70% of canopy density have been classified as very dense forest. So three type of classification: 40% or more they are dense forest, 70% and above are very dense forest. So 10 to 40% are kind of open forest. Depending on factors such as climate, biotic pressures, forest can improve or degrade in the next density category. Very density forest, this thing patch may be thin, they can become moderately dense forest or open forest, or they can be upgraded to moderate forest also. When previously forested area is considered as a non-forest or shrub below this 10% canopy, it also implies that complete loss of forest. Basically, see, if you have 10 to 40% of the forest already called open forest, so if it goes below 10%, those are kind of no forest areas, non-forest basically. So that means we are losing our forest cover. Plain aggregated data on the quantum of different forest type, they do not represent this dynamic process where a natural process transform, disappear, and they are replaced by plantations that typically grow much faster. In 2003, Indian State of Forest Report, they have made available data on this change matrix. Even when the data was stitched together, this indicates broader trends over 2 decades. What is forest balance sheet? So forest balance sheet also shows there is a kind of forest are not growing. If you see the table also, change in dense forest cover in 2003 and 2023, there is not much gain in this area, right? Non-forest area, shrub area, open forest, moderate dense forest, very dense forest. This canopy process, all these things are not happening in good manner. So what are all the implications? Under this kind of opaque veneer of the overall stability and growth in the forest cover, the trend of steady replacement of natural dense forest with plantation, this has been criticized by many of the experts. Suppose say if you go to Western Ghats, those are very dense forest. So those forests have been replaced due to several factors. One thing is urbanization is growing in fast manner. Second thing, industrial process is happening without regard to environment. Environment clearance process is not happening in proper manner. We need to take all these things in concern. Plantations, basically trees of the same age, they are vulnerable to fire, pest, epidemic. They are often barrier to regeneration of the natural forest. Even they are more biodiverse. They perform wide range of ecological functions, support numerous species also. Old natural forest, they are also stock of lot more carbon in their frame and also soil. In 2018, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, they flagged India's assumption that plantation reached carbon stock level of existing forest in just 8 years. Therefore, plantations are often promoted for their rapid growth. They can be achieved through carbon gets faster, but they can be harvested more readily, defeating climate goals in the long run. So we need to focus on all these things. The data. Subsequently, it seems we haven't learned much from environmental laws. We need to focus more. One side we are focusing more on renewable energy. Other side we need to protect our green cover. So this is the article about. Next article we will discuss about economy. What should be the focus of India's economy? India is going to become third largest economy by 28-29. So in this context, New Year is also approaching. Today is 24th, just 7 more days are there in this year. With New Year approaching, what should be the path forward for India in 2025 in economic terms? A good article has been written. We will discuss this article in detail. So, as we told several times, there is a dip in the economic output in the first 3 quarters of the 2024. India's long-term growth story, it is believed to be intact. Growth rate of 6.5% 5%. This would help country to remain as the fastest growing big economy in the world. But China, Japan, South Korea, they are also growing at almost 8% on sustained basis during their rapid growth phases. Whether 6% plus growth would be enough for country that needs to generate upward momentum of 8 million jobs every year until 2030, that is a big question we need to ask. And whether this growth rate would be enough to bridge expanding wealth disparity and offer scope for generational mobility, and we need to think about these things in detail. There is a view that decline in growth rate simply brings it back to trend after data changes that are triggered by pandemic and a subsequent buoyancy, abnormally low statistical base. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, she told lower than expected GDP growth of 5.4% in the second quarter of financial year 2025. This was only a temporary blip. Economist Nilakant Mishra and his team, they have described loss in the momentum for Indian economy in the first half of the current financial year is because of this is cyclical, basically unintended physical monetary tightening. In October, Japanese brokerage Nomura, they told that Indian economy was in the phase of cyclical growth slowdown. They described the Reserve Bank of India's estimate of 7.2% GDP expansion as kind of overly optimistic. Weeks later, RBI was forced to pare its forecast by more than half percentage point. So we told 7.5%, then it has come down to 6.5%, 6.7%. So what are the positive things we need to focus more on here? There are some clear upsides in the current picture of the economy. What is the government spending? Fiscal spending is already seen as rising, basically after elections has settled up. There is a recent cut in the cash reserve ratio. This has faced money kept by bank with RBI. Capital expenditure cycles, this has to be restarted in some sectors. There is a boost in capital formation. This added growth in the investment led. Even monetary easing expected to support growth in the coming financial year also. But government will likely to have to continue heavy lifting. Economist also says that GDP shock of quarter 2 of this financial year, this is another set of decimal numbers that could likely happen in quarter 3. This merely signals progressive normalization of the growth trajectory after the base effect of the pandemic effect. That could partly explain steady slide in the growth rate from 8.6 to 7.8, 7.8 to 6.7, 6.7 to 5.4 in 2024. It is not that we think the second quarter slowdown is purely data artifact or like kind of data comes in. It is automatically be upgraded. Numbers will be revised higher, or it could be simple as a seasonal factor, or it could be something more fundamental as the ability of the state to spend what is budgeted. But we will be tracked to achieve between 6.5 to 7% for the whole financial year. But the focus is on how to make sure that we grow sustainable rate at world that is going to be extraordinarily difficult. That's what told by Chief Economist Advisor V. Ananta Nageshwaran in Confederation of Indian Industry meeting. After a couple of quarters, it is likely that suboptimal economic output, GDP growth, it is projected to settle around 6.5%. This could be a mark in the real growth rate that is going back to trend. The question of growth going back to trend, the question that RBI's overestimation, these things poses this. Did the central bank keep interest rates high longer than needed because it had to project the excessively rosy picture of GDP growth? Inflation remains at the upper hand of the permissible hand. So even food prices, they are in the double digit growth. So whether RBI had made any issues with related to growth, that's what we need to think. Lower investment growth, this was largely due to public investment coming down. This could change in the second half of the fiscal year and later. So basically it talks about more. What is happening in the quarter 2, basically there was a slight slowdown. We need to reduce that. We need to focus more on the MSME recovery also. There are dismal trends when you are considering to MSME recovery. Corporate growth is slowing. This is because reduction in the consumption growth, but there could be upside also. Former chief statistician Pranab said, he told micro, small, medium enterprises, they have been hit repeatedly by the shocks such as the demonetization, implementation of GST, COVID-19 lockdown. They are perhaps getting back to business and competing with corporate sector also. While we need more data on this, two other signals suggest that there is a consumption based recovery in the rural areas as seen in the urban growth is flagging. Two, periodic labor force survey numbers they shows improvement in the salaried employment. This could be partly due to increasing non-casual labor jobs with MSMEs. As MSME rebound, this could mean two branches of the K-shapes of recovery. This could narrow also. Labor data this shows another positive female participate in the labor force increasing, particularly in rural areas. Around 39.6% of the women with education level of postgraduate and above, they are reported to working for 24 financial year 24. They compared to 34.5% in the financial year 18. For women with higher secondary education level, those numbers were just 23.9 or 11.4%. So basically what he wants to say is that women participation in labor force is growing. Growth in service sector. India services, they have share of GDP, they have hit high new target of October 2024. This is a key positive. On the structural drivers of the India's share gains in the global service exports, economists and teams they told there is a disaggregation of the global service value chains, rapid increase in global cross-border telecom bandwidth, even surge in remote working adding to the demographic trends that is supporting growth in the India's service exports and developing markets also. In November, India's service trade export they surpassed goods export because IT exports they continue to register strongest growth rate because there is a weak goods demand in the West, higher shipping cost due to the disruption in the Red Sea, and there are many such issues that had projected and increased our growth in services, but our goods sector has gone low. What are all the negative areas that we are facing issues now? When you come to investment, the performance is tapering off of many corporates and investments are struggling. Executives at Tata Consumer Products Limited, they have flagged concerns about softness in the urban demand. Those at the Nestle India, they have said that big cities, they have pressure points and blamed the muted demand because of the high food inflation. They have blamed heavy rain and elections induced slowdown. All this could have repercussions for growth and job creation. But why? Private investment struggling despite COVID corporate tax cuts, even exhaustions by government to invest. To unleash the so-called animal spirits, companies must feel optimistic about the future and not about look behind their backs. The single biggest hurdle in order to strengthen the conducive investment environment in India is we need to improve in our tax law and even administration also. So these things will definitely improve. Even a national convention of all India Federation of Tax Practitioners, they told about the same thing. Companies, they are also scaling down salary outlays. Real salary and wage expenditure growth of listed non-financial corporates, this has moderately softened around 0.8% in the quarter 2 of the financial year 2025. So these are all things shows there is a slowdown in the investment term. Even savings also, we have the investment gap. There is a decline in the household financial savings that could present another challenge. Even RBI's latest financial stability report, this shows financial savings of the household, they almost fell from 5.3% from 7.3% in financial year 2022. So basically below the 8% average of the previous decade. Household net savings, they are the total money and investment of the families, including deposit, stocks, bonus, even any monetary gain they owe, such as loans and other debt also. Over the same period, household debt, it has jumped sharply. Annual borrowings at almost 5.8% of the GDP, second highest level since 1970s. Large part of the saving is also entering financial markets by passing banking industry, which is another worry. why when it enters to financial markets, when it not goes to banking, it means financial market it won't give anything, but when it goes to banking, at least it will help the economy. Credit growth also, if you can see, it has been falling. Households mostly they borrow finance for home purchases, they have been not doing good since 2021. For a while industry had offset this, but this is tapered off since beginning of the 2023. Excess capacity, lack of appetite for new project, this is seen as limiting the industry's capacity to absorb new credit also. In such kind of scenario, bond financed government spending is the only meaningful way to generate new credit in the economy. According to Mishra, one of the economists, new debt issued must be clean up of the hidden debt in the local level. Unless there is a fundamental shift in the use of financial force to stimulate the economy, high growth is unlikely. Banking lending to MSMEs, this could be something to watch, especially personal credit grows and corporates are willing to borrow. These things we need to focus more on. Fiscal prudence at the center, fiscal consolidation, this has been at the consistent theme. A projected decline in the fiscal deficit from 6.4% to 5.9% of GDP in this financial year 24. This will stabilize public debt around almost 83% of the GDP. This is promising indicator for sustainability, even good for India's growth outlook according to International Monetary Fund. But competitive loosening of the purse strings by states, this poses financial problems. RBI, this has flagged concerns over sharp increase in the expenditure by states on various subsidies, including farm loan waivers and cash transfers also. Axis Bank's India's Outlook report, they also told about by 2025, 14 states would have same version of handout schemes, about almost 134 million women. This is almost made up 20% of the women in India. These programs, they cost the government almost around 1.9 lakh crore every year, almost 0.6% of the GDP. While these transfers, this have helped lower income families by giving them more money to spend, especially on food, pulses, onions and tomatoes. The supply of these items has not increased enough. This has caused food prices to rise. This is what like in several reports have said. If you see here the graph, many of the times there is a decline in the growth rate in urban areas. Several states are facing a lot of issues and income transfer schemes that is not happening in proper manner. So these things we need to focus on. We have positive points, we have negative points, we need to focus on there. Anyhow, we have our civil servants working on all these issues. But we also need to be aware of all these things. We should contribute more. And we should be aware of where we can focus more. So today we discussed 3 articles. First article is about good governance. What we can learn from India's global and old practices about good governance. And there is a slight or marginal increase in the India's forest cover. This article we have discussed in detail. Though there is a marginal increase, but over the period of decade we haven't achieved much in forest cover and tree cover also. 25.16% is only under the tree and forest cover, so it is a concern. Third thing we discussed about Indian economy overall, what should be the outlook for 2025. So that's all for today. Thank you very much.